Hey guys, Preston here. Welcome back to another video. Today we are doing something a little different. So I'm pausing my series on the Steelers positional breakdowns to move to my favorite college team, which if you can't tell already is Notre Dame. And today we're starting with the quarterback, so I'm rocking the Ian Book jersey. Good thing about Notre Dame is there's no names on the back, so let's just hope whoever ends up getting number 12 once Ian Book leaves is also a very good player. Okay, so the Notre Dame quarterback room is smaller than it once could have been with, give me 1 second. I got it now. Phil Jerkovich, I think is his name. I can never say the last name. He left for Boston College in the offseason. He transferred away. Mainly, my guess would be due to the incoming talent coming in at quarterback with 4-star Drew Pine coming in this 2020 class, and former 5-star just recently downgraded to 4-star. We'll talk about that. Tyler Buckner coming in 2021. But today we're going to focus on the 3 quarterbacks we have on the roster for this 2020 season, which hopefully happens. Fingers crossed. And we'll mention Buckner a little bit, but obviously the main guy, the first one up, is Ian Book, which makes this quarterback room a lot. It's a super solid quarterback room, one of the top ones in the nation. In fact, who was it? It was Ian Book was nominated for I believe it's called the Davey O'Brien Award. Is that what it is? He's on the preseason watch list for the nation's top quarterback, which, granted, I think it's like 30 people got put on that, but there's like 120 odd something D1 programs, and so being on that list is special, and it's something that is nice to have. And Ian Book is truly a top quarterback in the college level. I'm not sure how he'll translate to the NFL. I wish him the best with that after this season, but he should improve every year like he has been, and this is his 5th and final season, and so hopefully he can go all out. Next year is when it gets really interesting with our quarterback rooms, which is why I'll talk a little bit about the 2 guys underneath him. Will be 3 once he leaves. There'll be 3 quarterbacks in here again, all fighting for the starting spot. So the 2021 season, that off season after this year, will be very fun to look at. There'll be a QB competition. I would almost be certain there'd be a QB competition. Real quick, we'll just talk about the eligibility of these guys. So like I mentioned, Ian Book is a 5th-year senior. He is on his last year of eligibility, which means he will be gone after this season. No coming back. Barring, I guess, unfortunately, maybe if they let a medical redshirt or something, but we really don't want that to happen. We want him to start this year, and then unfortunately, we got to move on after that. Behind him is a sophomore in Brandon Clark, but according to the Sports Illustrated site I'm looking at, it looks like he was able to redshirt, and so he's a redshirt freshman in terms of eligibility, but actually a sophomore. And then Drew Pine is just coming in this 2020 class, so he is a true freshman, but I would imagine he'd qualify for the red shirt. Something that's go really bad if he plays in more than 4 games this year. So I'd imagine I'd look for him to get redshirted this season. All right, so let's go just in depth with Ian Book first. Obviously, we know his story. He was a kid who came in kind of underrated. We're gonna go through. So I got all these quarterbacks' recruiting profiles pulled up too, so we can kind of see what they were at the time. And Ian Book and Brendan Clark are semi-similar. I will say Clark was slightly more coveted, but Ian Book coming out of high school I'm using 247 by the way. So on their composite rankings, he was the 517th player in the nation in his 2016 class, and the 20th pro-style quarterback. On theirs, without the composite, he was actually 18th pro-style quarterback. The man only had 5 offers, and only 2 Power 5 offers, being Washington State and Notre Dame. His other offers were Boise State, Idaho, UNLV. Yeah, that's it, and us. So, I'm sorry, Washington State, UNLV, Idaho, or Boise State fans. I'm glad we ended up with him. This is an example of you get a kid because you like his work ethic. I think most of us weren't. Ian Book was definitely more of an afterthought when he got recruited, and just in general. Obviously, he beat out a 4-star, and it's a very talented kid in Brandon Wimbush for that starting job. I liked Wimbush, but he definitely had inconsistencies, and I think Ian Book was a perfect fit. In 2017, this is sportsreference.com's college football stats, so if they're wrong, please don't blame me. I can only get off what they tell me. In 2017, it's said he had 46 completions on 75 attempts with a 61 completion percentage for 456 yards, which not bad for, that's only 75 attempts. That's pretty good. The only downfall was that 4 touchdowns to 4 picks with 119.3 passer rating. Not great, right? But that was spotty playing. That 2017 year, I believe, it was Wimbush who was starting that entire season, I believe, minus a game or two. I think Book started a North Carolina game that season, and there was murmurs about calling for Book to replace Wimbush then. Wimbush didn't have the most fanfare, you could say. I mean, Book definitely was raw in that you can tell just based off, 4 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Never a great stat line to have. But 2018 is obviously when he broke out. We all know this. A couple games into the season, they swapped out Wimbush for Ian Book, and Ian Book never looked back. He ended up with 314 attempts this season, which is way more than the 75. His completion percentage went up to a 68.2. He ended up with 2,628 passing yards, 19 touchdowns to 7 picks. So and 154 passer rating, along with 8.4 yards an attempt. So his numbers went up across the board. Now, it's not even mentioning the rushing numbers, which I'm going to have to find in a second because I think running is actually a big part of Ian Book's game we should probably talk about. But 2018, I mean, he's a big reason why we made it to the playoff that year. He really stepped it up. That's great. Almost 70% completion percentage, 19 touchdowns. 7 picks is, it could be worse, right? The passer rating is impressive at 154. Last season, in his senior year, he started the whole season, this time, obviously, with 399 attempts. The only unfortunate thing with his senior year, there's pros and cons. It's kind of minor. His completion percentage dropped 8%, which is not something you want to see. But his yards went up, like 400-something to 3,034. His touchdowns went up from 19 all the way up to 34. And so I don't know if it's just the way the offense moved this year or something, but he threw it more, and he got a lot more touchdowns. He had one less pick, too, so there was definitely good signs there. I think he needs to bump that completion percentage up. That's always been my biggest complaint with Ian Book, is I've seen him miss some throws where you're kind of like, there's some overthrowing on screens and stuff will drive you mad as a fan, but we know just looking overall, he's a very good quarterback, and most teams would be very lucky to have him. We have to be realistic with this Notre Dame program and realize we're not pulling in, the Bryce Youngs and the Tuas, the top quarterbacks of the high school recruiting era. And the fact that this kid was a 3-star, whose only other Power 5 offer was the Washington State, is doing these kind of numbers at a program just really shows how we can develop these kids and how, hard work really pays off. And Book's a great kid. He's a leader. He was I think he was named a captain last season. I would imagine he'd be a captain this season too. Final year. Hopefully he can put it all together this year. He shows he can do everything already. We've seen it. That 2018 year had the good completion percentage and passer rating. And then that last season showed his passing yards and his touchdown capabilities. Everything, I'd expect numbers to improve across the board again this year. Maybe attempts could be down a little bit. It all depends on how new offensive play caller Tommy Rees runs this offense. It seemed like Brian Kelly, the head coach Brian Kelly, wanted to emphasize the run more this past season. But with the running back room we have, which I'll talk about eventually, I still think airing it out might be a better bet. I do hope a healthy balance happens. It'll be interesting to see. But really the only thing he needs to focus on is getting that completion percentage up. There's just some small things, he still does. It's a little raw. He didn't play it all the years. He didn't start till 2018, so he's a 5th-year guy, but he's only really got 2 years of starting. So this is like his junior year of starts. When you think of it that way, he should be poised for a breakout season, and I'm very excited about it. Like I said, there's no controversy here. No one's taking his job. He is the man. It's his job to lose. We would imagine it's very unlikely he craps the bed this year. He should be very solid, and part of the reason Notre Dame is very competitive this season. I want to get his rushing stats. If you want to give me a second, I'll pull those up too. Okay, I got the rushing stats. These have also improved across the board each year. That season in 2017 with not as much playing time. He actually had 206 rushing yards on 38 attempts, which is pretty impressive, averaging 5.4 yards a rush. Pretty darn effective. No touchdowns, though. But I will say, and then after that, he continued to, his rushing has improved every year as well, with 280 yards in 95 attempts in 2018, the year he finally took over as a starting quarterback, and he ended up with 4 rushing touchdowns as well. The average yards per carry did drop considerably down to 2.9, though. But this past season is when his stats, like his the actual physical on-field stats, so, completion percentage wasn't there, like I said, but his passing yards, his rushing yards, his touchdowns, his interceptions were all heading in the right direction. Interceptions down, everything else up. He had 546 rushing yards, averaging almost 5 yards a rush and 4 touchdowns on the ground this year. I believe something I read, the stat line he had with the amount of passing yards and rushing yards this year, the only other quarterback that did that was a Heisman contender in Jalen Hurts. And so that was pretty elite company at the college level, and Ian Book is proven he came in the college as a pro-style quarterback. That's what he was ranked as, was a 20th pro-style quarterback in his class. But in fact, he has developed nicely into a true dual threat. 546 rushing yards from your quarterback is very solid. He bailed us out a couple times. If you remember the Virginia Tech game, his scramble into the end zone literally saved us that game. And I think his running will also factor in pretty big to this year again, with the fact that we don't have, I can't think of a true number 1 running back right now. We don't have whoa, this guy's a problem. There's no Jerome Bettis on this team, And so I think Ian Book's rushing will be an important part of our run attack this year, and I think he's more than capable, and he's going to continue to improve there. Ian Book is legit, guys. I know I've been guilty of complaining about him too. There's been games where I'm like, oh, come on. But I mean, the reality is he is very solid, and he could actually, after this season, end up with records for Notre Dame quarterbacks. And so we'll see how it goes, but it is going to suck missing him. But now it's time to move on to the guys underneath him, and 2 people who in fact will be competing for the starting spot next season. I think the depth chart's pretty solidified this year, especially with the lack of spring practice, limiting how much true freshman Drew Pine can actually really work with everyone. Makes it a lot harder for freshmen. I would imagine having to do all this through Zoom and not really getting hands-on stuff, less spring practices, really hurts the true freshman. He is very talented, though, don't get me wrong. I just think Brendan Clark's already been in the system, so he is my favorite to be the backup, and I would imagine he will be. A little bit about Brendan Clark. I compared him to Ian Book, like I mentioned earlier, just in the fact that he's a 3-star. When the other quarterbacks we're pulling now around these guys have been 4 stars, with Wimbush a 4-star, Jerkovich a 4-star. Then he had Book, who's a 3. Preenan, Drew Pine, and Tyler Buckner both 4, debatably 5 for Buckner. And here's another 3-star kid who has a chance to be the starter for Notre Dame in 2021. He, according to the composite, was the 21st pro-style quarterback coming out of high school. He played in Virginia, Manchester High School in Virginia, class of 2019. Let's see, the 247, their non-composite actually had him as the 15th best pro-style quarterback. He is another kid who, he had better offers than Book, but he still did not have a lot of offers. The other offers I got pulled up right away is Wake Forest, Clemson, Duke, and Maryland. Apparently, he was originally committed to Wake Forest, and we convinced him to flip to Maryland to us. And it kind of worked out because now he has a shot to actually be the starter at Notre Dame, which honestly, to me, if you ask me, that's better than being the starter at Wake Forest. Okay, there's some 247s showing he had a 4.7 440, a 4.37 shuffle, and a 32.50 vertical. Not bad. From what I've read about the kid, he has very good arm talent, and he's very tough. The physical traits are there. He's just got to, put it all together. The running, it seems like his running ability is kind of there. He can get around. He's got the good size for a quarterback, at least compared to some of the other kids around him, as Ian Book and Drew Pine are both listed as around 6 foot. I've seen different sources say different things. Sports Illustrated has Book at 6 and Pine at 5'11 and a half. 247 has Book all the way at 6'1 and Pine at 6. But you got a guy in Clark who's actually at 6'2", 217 according to 247, which to me is a pretty good size. He's a tough kid. Obviously, he's a grinder. You ask me, you're a 3-star, and you choose to come to a school like Notre Dame at that quarterback position where there's guys who have been higher recruits than you and more highly touted, you got to have some courage in yourself and real belief that you can get the job done. He will get to see playing them this year, I'd imagine. Hopefully, obviously losing some of these games with certain opponents could make it interesting. Although I don't, we'll have to see how the Notre Dame schedule looks like. If they go full ACC, that means they won't have any, because a lot of times these backups and stuff get their playing time when we play the Western Michigans and Bowling Greens of the world. And if we don't have that, I don't know how much playing time he will get, but I expect him to see the field at least a little bit to get some more development on there. I think he's more capable of being a backup than we think. I know there's a decent amount of people worried about our quarterback situation when Phil Jurkovich transferred to the enemy in Boston College. But the reality is we'll be just fine just based off the kids we got coming in. The fact Brandon Clark is actually pretty darn good. I think he actually has a lot of potential. He could very well end up being our starter in 2021 season. Only time will tell, but he has the traits. Here real quick, I'll show you what Sports Illustrated had to say about him. Right here, they said Clark has physical tools to be a very productive starting college quarterback right now. His role as the backup. He has ideal backup quarterback traits. Let's see. Yeah, can use those traits to exploit the defenses. Right here, this is basically what they've had so far. This is kind of the base thing of Clark. Obviously, we haven't seen a lot of tape of him in college. We would hope he's been developed nicely by the guys we have in the building. They said the Virginia native has a powerful right arm and is also very athletic and a capable runner, they are ideal traits to build around. He is not wrong. Having a quarterback who can scramble is pretty important, especially in today's kind of system. Ian Book was also rated as a pro-style quarterback, but proved to be very good at scrambling. Pine's in the same kind of mold, and he has a killer arm, which is very helpful. He's got good traits that you can build on. We haven't seen a lot of them yet, but I am confident that he can do very well, especially as a backup role. 2021 will be more interesting. We'll talk to see if I'd imagine Pine would be a redshirt freshman coming into that, and the true freshman Buckner competing with it'd be a redshirt sophomore Brendan Clark in 2021. But for right now, just for this year, I'm not worried at all about the quarterback position. I know it's not as good as it was. I mean, having 4 quarterbacks is probably safer, especially when Phil has a lot more experience and got a lot of those backup reps. But I do think Drew Pine will be just fine. The spring practice, not having spring practice hurts. But I think, Ian Book's pretty reliable at not missing games. We just got to cross our fingers and hope he doesn't miss anything big. But I think Clark is pretty capable, and I think he could actually surprise us a little bit. Stats-wise, he hasn't really shown much. All ESPN shows is he had 1 completion on 2 attempts for 22 yards. And it ended up being a touchdown, too, which is nice. Apparently, on the ground, though, he actually ran a decent bit, going 1 attempt 9 yards against Bowling Green and 4 attempts for 24 yards against New Mexico. And like I said, those are 2 easier opponents. That's when these kids get reps, especially when he was the 3rd-string quarterback last season. But like I said, he has building blocks there, and he should at the very least be a solid backup quarterback for the rest of his career, maybe even earn the starting spot. We'll see if he'll be another Ian Book mold of a lesser recruited kid working hard and earning the starting spot at this program. The next guy we will talk about is too much, I apologize, is the last one on the current roster. I could be wrong. Let me know. I'm going off everything I've seen. There is only 3 quarterbacks in our roster right now. There might be a walk-on or 2 I don't know about. If you know, feel free to comment. I think technically Avery Davis was a quarterback when we recruited him, but he plays basically everything now. I'll have to figure out when I'll talk about him, either with the receivers, running backs, corners. I don't know anymore. The kid's all over the place. True athlete. All right, here we go with Drew Pine. I can't give much on him besides his recruiting info. He is listed at 6'1", 194. He was a 4-star, pretty high 4-star, 9166 and 247 sports composite. We have an evaluation by one of their national recruiting analysis. I'll read to you what he has to say about him just watching his college tape. They said he lacks the size of a prototypical pocket passer, which is true, but at 6 foot, he's around the same size that Ian Book is. So clearly, the quarterback position's changed a bit. You got guys like Book, Russell Wilson, Drew Brees, Baker Mayfield showing you can get it done. Kyler Murray showing you can get it done and not be like 6'5". But I get it when you're just kind of looking from the outside. They said he has some dual threat ability, ran a 4.7 in the 40, very similar to what Brendan Clark did. Productive in high school with a 6-to-1 touchdown interception ratio, which is something nice you want to see. Obviously, he didn't play in the most football-rich state coming out of Connecticut, but it's still impressive nonetheless. Let's see. Said he has very good touch on intermediate passes and can drop balls in between linebackers and defensive backs. He understands offensive concepts very well. His pocket presence is apparently impressive, which is very good. I mean, we have a very solid offensive line, so hopefully he doesn't have to feel pressure that much. But it's always a good trait to have. He can move in the pocket, can expend trades. According to this, his biggest needs right now is his arm strength, and his accuracy can be pretty inconsistent on deep balls, which would make sense if his arm strength needs a little work. Uses a lot of body power to make throws on deep, multi-year. But he's projected to be a multi-year starter at a high-level program and could develop into an NFL free agent. So they don't currently view him as a draftable player, but he is projected to be a Power 5 starter. The multi-year starter at a high-level program, that's a good thing to say about a quarterback who is at a high-level program like ours and could end up being a multi-year starter. His pro comparison right now is Chase Daniel. Some of this stuff, like the arm strength, it seems like it could be worked out pretty easy with the fact that he will more than likely get the red shirt this year, and he'll be in a college weightlifting program, which you see a lot of kids come into their colleges and once you're in that college training, you can bulk up. They tend to bulk up pretty quick, especially if they want them to, and that's the goal. You see body transformations happen pretty effectively once kids reach these college programs. Luckily, there's not a lot of pressure on Drew Pine. The fact that he doesn't have to start this year at all, and he can actually take this year to learn everything and really fight for a starting spot next season is a luxury to have, especially in a COVID world where if he had to try to fight for a starting spot now, it would be very unfortunate for him not having not a lot of spring practice time, And so, as a recruit, we'll look at some of these teams. He was rated as the 8th pro-style quarterback in the nation from the 2000 Sports Composite. He had plenty of legit offers. In fact, he had over 25. I'll go to a complete team list just so I can list some of the notable ones. I mean, once you have 25 offers, he's pretty good. Like I said, the 8th quarterback in this 2020 class, a very good get for Notre Dame. It's nice to see her landing quarterbacks like this. He had offers from Alabama, Arizona, Auburn, Baylor, Boston College. I'm not even going to mention the smaller schools. Florida State, Louisville, LSU. The national champs offered the kid. Alabama offered the kid. These are schools who pull in good quarterbacks. Maryland, Miami, Michigan. I hate Michigan, but they offered him. North Carolina, Missouri, Oklahoma. Okay, Oklahoma offered him. That's a good sign. Oklahoma is... I firmly believe that Lincoln Riley has an eye for quarterback talent, so if he wanted him, he's pretty legit. Just a lot of schools, Penn State, South Carolina, on and on. I could go on forever with some of these guys, but they're very elite programs. Or maybe, they got their list a little confused, but you get the point. There's a lot of very good programs who are pining for his talents, pun intended. But we landed a top 10 pro-style quarterback in the class. That's very good for us. He was 225th overall, so not a top 100 prospect, but a 4-star quarterback nonetheless with a lot of talent he's bringing to the table. He's 194, 6 foot right now, but like I said, he can build onto his frame and add some strength, which should hopefully help with his deep arm talent and those deep throws in general, getting a season the red shirt and learn from everyone else. I'm very excited about Pine. I think a lot of people are tending to overlook him a little bit just because the fact that the kid coming in behind him and Tyler Buckner is a lot higher rated and was a 5-star until just recently. And so really, before I get into Buckner, looking at this 2020 quarterback room as a whole, I'd give it an A, maybe an A-. Because the depth, the backup, whoever the backup ends up being, which more than likely will be Brendan Clark, does not have a lot of experience, which is different than last season. But the starter has this will be his 3rd full season starting, and he's improved every year. And so having a truly, to me, elite college level starter with impact high potential backups is a very good spot for us to be in. It could be a lot worse than it is. The quarterback room is not something I'm worried about for the future. If anything, I'm very excited, especially for that 2021 season. Like I said, seeing Book on will suck, but it'll be really interesting to watch a QB battle between Drew Pine, Brendan Clark, and this kid we're going to briefly talk about before we end the video, and that is Tyler Buckner. I know this seems a bit weird talking about him because he won't even be on the team until next season, but I thought it was worth it. This kid is a top 100 prospect, and in composite, he's all the way up at 42, making him a top 50 prospect. Listed as the third best dual threat quarterback in the country. Like I mentioned earlier, unfortunately, he was recently dropped out of the 5-star to 4-star after a relatively mediocre Elite 11 camp. But there's a lot of things going on with that Elite 11, but, take his will, COVID times. I think there's a good chance he earns that star back. He transferred to a high school that will give him tougher competition than who he was playing at his former high school. And so hopefully he can earn that 5-star back. Just, because having top recruiting classes just looks good for the program. I know some people are always like, stars don't matter, which in essence it doesn't, but in reality, the programs recruiting in the top 10 consistently are the ones competing for national championships. And I would hope Notre Dame can continue to recruit. We need to get into that top 10 again. I think it's unfortunate that Kelly started talking about top 5 classes, and then our last 2020 class was outside the top 50, wasn't even top 15. This one right now isn't top 15. Granted, there's a lot left with this class. I am confident they can add some elite talent. We'll have to see what happens. But with just Buckner, I think it's Buckner, right? I would imagine. I can read you what he was evaluated. He was evaluated on 4.8 of 2020. He has a 4.65 40, which is faster than all the other kids that were recorded. He's a true dual threat. He's got a 31-inch vertical, apparently. Here we go. I'll read what Greg Riggins, who's a national recruiting analyst, had to say about him. He's already projected to be a future high-round NFL draft pick, which is different than what Drew Pine was. So there's a lot of hype coming around Tyler right now. He said a dynamic signal caller who's completely recovered from it. Okay. So he had an injury in his sophomore season, but he bounced back very good last season, so that helps a lot. Dynamic athlete, two-sport athlete because he was a nationally known lacrosse player in middle school. You wouldn't think about that too much, but a lot of stuff, including guys like Urban Meyer, they've talked about that kids who've played in multiple sports are kind of the people they look for because it really shows, their versatility and their, competitiveness, their true competitive nature. They said physically athletic frame, and he ends up looking like a running back when he gets out in open field. Unique sense for making defender live on outside the pocket. Proof mechanical. Sorry, I'm kind of reading this right now. Tough kid who'll need to rein in the running a bit. So they're saying he needs to limit his running a little bit once he makes it to the college level, but you have to love the fire he plays with. And apparently they have him projected as an impact upper-tier Power 5 starter and a future high-round NFL draft pick. He's been compared to Sam Darnold of the New York Jets. I am very excited about Buckner. He's also, the tallest kid we have. Him and Pine are both 6'2", so they're a little more closer to that prototypical quarterback size at 6'2", 205. I think Buckner does have a lot of talent. I think he can start as a true freshman in 2021. He'll have to beat out Drew Pine and Brendan Clark, which just makes it all the more exciting. But that'll be for us to talk about when next season comes around. Right now, this season, Ian Book is firmly entrenched as one of the best quarterbacks in the nation. To me, he's a top 10 quarterback in all of college football, and that shouldn't change. As long as he has a very strong year, I won't be worried about this quarterback position, and I look forward to seeing Irish play this season. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what you think about this current quarterback room, and maybe if you got a prediction for who starts in 2021 after Ian Book leaves, or if you differ with me on the backup and you think that Drew Pine beats out Brendan Clark for that backup spot. Kind of just let me know what you think about Notre Dame's quarterback future. I am personally excited about it. It's always interesting, changing quarterbacks is always a tough thing to do, but I like the kids that Notre Dame has brought in. And so it'll be very fun to watch this next season. It was fun to watch past season, but minus the Michigan game, that was atrocious. All right, guys, stay tuned for more videos. I think I might go back and forth with the Steelers and Notre Dame. I'll go in order with this stuff, though, so it'd be running backs next for Notre Dame whenever I get that out. Make sure to like and subscribe for more sports-related videos for anything, especially if you're a Notre Dame fan or a Steeler fan, but I tend to cover sports in general and a little bit of gaming stuff here and there too. So please subscribe so you can stay tuned for more content. Please like the video. It really helps get it out to more viewers, and I greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching. This is KMA Preston signing out. Go Irish.